What's up guys, Lon here from Android Authority, and HTC has always been sort of an underdog, and if there ever was a year to root for the underdog, this might be the year. The HTC U11 was just recently released, but how does it stack up to arguably one of the best Android phones currently on the market? Let's find out with the HTC U11 versus the Samsung Galaxy S8. So for the full rundown on both of these devices, make sure to check out their respective reviews if you haven't already, as this comparison is going to be fairly light on specs and focus more on how these two devices compare in terms of how I feel about them and their overall experience. Even though it may not look like it at first glance, the S8 and U11 are more similar than they are different. They're both being powered by the latest Snapdragon 835 and 4GB of RAM, so these are very fast phones. They're also both dust and water resistant, with IP68 on the S8 and IP67 on the U11. That wasn't intentionally supposed to rhyme, but it did. They're also built from very similar materials. You've got mainly glass bodies and metal frames, and they both feature curved edge glass on the front and rear panels that seamlessly melt into the metal frame. You won't find any sharp or rough edges on either one of these devices, which makes them both very comfortable to hold, and they just look extremely sleek. The only downside, of course, is that they attract fingerprints like crazy, but the U11 is definitely the more eye-catching device when looking at these two from the back. The mirror-like finish, or liquid glass surface as HTC likes to call it, is not only unique, but it's very beautiful to look at, especially with how some of the colors are able to shift and change depending on the lighting and angle. If you're looking at the S8 and U11 from the front, the S8 will more than likely be the one that grabs your attention. The screen practically goes completely edge to edge, and the bezels are incredibly thin, allowing the screen to truly be the center of attention. The screen itself is also just gorgeous to look at, with fantastic colors, brightness, and vibrancy. It really is the best looking display on a smartphone right now. That isn't to say that the U11 screen is bad by any means. In fact, it's actually quite the opposite. It's a great looking screen in its own right, and because it's still 16:9, you won't have to deal with any awkward black bars above and below the display, but it's certainly not going to turn any heads being surrounded by much thicker bezels. The other benefit with the thinner bezels in combination with the 18.5:9 aspect ratio is being able to have a larger screen in a smaller body. Both the S8 and S8 Plus have a bigger screen than the U11, and the S8 Plus is fairly comparable in size to the U11 despite having a screen that's over a half an inch larger. Just because the S8 has a better screen does not mean it's the superior smartphone. The S8 does have its flaws, and there's a few things that I actually think the U11 does better than the S8. The first and most obvious one is the fingerprint sensor. The U11's fingerprint sensor is in a much more convenient location, and in my experience is much more reliable and a lot faster. The S8 does have alternative methods for unlocking the phone, like the iris scanner and the facial recognition, but this still doesn't really make up for the awkwardly placed fingerprint sensor. If you care about headphone jacks and the convenience of having a headphone jack, the S8 will be the way to go, but the U11 offers a far better audio experience both through the external speakers and through the headphones. The weak and hollow sounding single bottom firing speaker on the S8 just doesn't compare to the tweeter and woofer combo of the U11. Not only does the U11 have two speakers, but it's leveraging the entire body of the phone as an acoustic chamber, which makes it sound much louder and fuller. The U11's included Usonic USB Type-C earbuds feature active noise cancellation and sound fantastic for a pair of earbuds, but you can still plug in any headphones that you want with the 3.5mm to USB Type-C adapter. This adapter also has a DAC built inside of it, so any pair of headphones that you have will sound much better on the U11 than they would on the S8, and you should be able to properly drive much higher impedance headphones. The last thing that the U11 does better than the S8/S8 Plus is battery life. Despite having a smaller battery, or in the case of the S8, the same size battery, I find myself getting through a full day with the U11 much easier. The upside to the S8 is that you have wireless charging, so you have more options when it comes to charging, which is great, but if you care more about battery life, the U11 does a much better job. Now, even though these are both Android devices, the software experiences are very very different, but it's sort of a toss-up because I think the software on the S8 and U11 are very good in their own ways. Samsung has done a fantastic job of improving their software over the last couple of years, and aesthetically it has a very clean and minimalistic look on the S8. The icons, text, and colors are much more appealing now, and there's a lot of nice little touches like the infinity wallpapers or the new swipe up gesture to get to the app drawer. The biggest problem that Samsung still has with the software is all the extra bloatware and Samsung applications that duplicate what Google is already doing. HTC took care of this problem last year with the HTC 10, so you won't find any duplicate apps on the U11, but the Sense experience itself could use a revamp considering it hasn't changed all that much over the last year or so, and it's starting to feel a little bit dated. AI assistants are becoming a pretty big trend, and even though the S8 and U11 come with Google Assistant, that didn't stop Samsung and HTC from creating their own. You've got Bixby on the S8 and Sense Companion on the U11, and it's nice to see companies creating some competition, but neither one of them are doing anything groundbreaking or different from what Google is already doing for you. Bixby is also very half-baked right now, and Sense Companion doesn't have a voice component, so you'll still be relying on Google Assistant or Amazon's Alexa when the support for that comes out. Historically, when deciding between the cameras of Samsung and HTC, Samsung has always been the better choice, but this year the decision is going to be a lot tougher. Both of these cameras are incredible in terms of picture quality. Samsung does crank up the colors and contrast a lot, which most people, including myself, don't really mind, but if you'd rather have a more natural and lifelike image, the U11 does a much better job. What really separates these cameras are the features. Samsung decided to have a little fun this year by adding some Snapchat as filters, which Snapchat users will really appreciate, and the front-facing camera now has autofocus to help you take better selfies. The U11, on the other hand, is really great if you enjoy shooting video. It can record 3D audio and has 5-axis image stabilization to help you get smoother looking footage. It's been a long time since both Samsung and HTC's flagships went completely neck and neck, and if I had to pick, I would still go with the Galaxy S8, but only by the narrowest of margins. I absolutely love the screen and the way it feels in the hand, and it's what keeps me coming back to the Galaxy S8, but it's definitely a very tough decision having to pick between these two devices. But let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Which one would you pick? Would you pick the Galaxy S8 or the HTC U11? Let us know in the comments. And as always, give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell while you're at it so you don't miss out on future videos. And check us out on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Google+, all that good stuff will be linked down below. And as always, check the website, AndroidAuthority.com, because we are your source for all things Android.